First off, I want to say thank you to my Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. If it wasn't for him, this would not be possible. Low Nose Boxing, hit the like button, share the video, leave a comment, subscribe. There was a recent interview with Ryan Garcia. Ryan Garcia touched on a very sensitive topic to a certain fan base, Triple G's fan base. And Ryan Garcia straight up said that Triple G is not a Hall of Fame fighter. And after analyzing Triple G's career, I must admit, this is a very good topic. This is a very good debate. And I say that because Triple G, the reality is, as dominant as he was as a world champion, Triple G doesn't have any legacy-defining victories on his resume. His best wins were Daniel Jacobs, which was a very close fight. A lot of people felt it was controversial. His first pay-per-view main event against David Lemieux, his victory over Kell Brook, his victory over Martin Murray, his victory over Daniel Gill. None of those guys are Hall of Fame worthy fighters. Every fighter that's on the Hall of Fame list, to my knowledge, or at least considered a great fighter, has at least one win over someone who is a Hall of Fame worthy fighter. Triple G doesn't have a win over a Hall of Fame or a pound for pound fighter. So Ryan Garcia does have a good argument. However, you can't take away the fact that Triple G has 21 successful title defenses at 160 pounds. He broke the record that was set by Bernard Hopkins, who broke the record that was set by Carlos Monzon. So regardless of Triple G not having a legacy-defining win on his record, you can't take away the fact that the man did make 21 title defenses. And for the most part, Triple G was a very dominant fighter during his prime. He only had about maybe 2 fights out of his victories that were questionable, and that was the Daniel Jacobs victory, and that was also the victory over Derevchenko, right? Those are the only 2 wins that he has on his resume that have controversy. His biggest fight, his legacy fights, were against Canelo Alvarez. The first fight, a lot of people felt Triple G won that fight, and it's a good debate. But at the end of the day, he did not win the fight. And the fight was not that controversial to the point where it was a clear-out robbery, because it was still a close fight. And then Canelo went on to beat him decisively 2 times following that. Triple G did a disservice to his own career by not taking on other guys around his division. Triple G never fought Jermell Charlo. He never fought any of the Charlos. He never fought Demetrius Andrade. And when Andre Ward was calling him out at a time when Triple G was flirting with the possibility of going to 168 pounds, Triple G did not take on Andre Ward. So that does hurt his legacy. But the $1 million question is, does Triple G get into the Hall of Fame? I would say yes. Off the strength of his run, his title reign, the fact that he broke the record for the most title defenses at 160 pounds, I would say Triple G gets into the Hall of Fame. Now, is Triple G, for me, going to be considered a great fighter? I'm not sure. I'll say barely, but Triple G is definitely not an all-time great. Triple G, I would say, is more of a, I'm just going to say that Triple G is a Hall of Famer. And I'm not saying it in a matter to downplay that, because to be in boxing, just to be a world champion in itself is a very difficult feat to accomplish. Better yet, get into the Hall of Fame. But for me, there's 4 different tiers in terms of legendary status. You got Hall of Fame, where you get into the Hall of Fame, right? Like Triple G doesn't have any legacy-defining wins. Can't call him a great fighter, but he's a Hall of Famer. Arturo Gatti, very popular fighter, gets in because of his blood and guts wars, the popularity and stuff like that. And then you got great fighters. And then you have all-time greats. And then you have GOAT status. GOAT status is only reserved for, I would say, the top 10 of all time. And in order to get into the top 10, in my opinion, on my list, you have to be the fighter of your respective decade. You see, the 2010s, Floyd Mayweather Jr. was fighter of the decade. 2000s, Manny Pacquiao. 1990s, Roy Jones Jr. 1980s, Sugar Ray Leonard. 1970s, Roberto Duran. 1960s, Muhammad Ali. And I can keep going on and on and on. For me, that's what makes you a GOAT status. When you're in the conversation amongst the greatest of all time. After the 2020s, Terrence Crawford and Alexander Usyk are two fighters that are on the lead to eventually become the fighter of this decade. And I would lean more towards Bud Crawford, because Bud Crawford is being spoken of in the GOAT category. And usually I don't talk about active fighters when it comes to these types of lists. But Bud Crawford is basically near the end of his career, and he's done enough to basically say that he's going to be on the GOAT status at some point. But Triple G is the topic. So for me, Triple G is going to be a Hall of Famer. He's going to be there for sure based on what he's done and accomplishments, but he's not going to be considered a great fighter. When Triple G gets into the Hall of Fame, he's going to sit in a table with Arturo Gatti, rest in peace. Fernando Vargas, I believe, is going to get into the Hall of Fame, but he's not going to be considered one of the greats because he lost the majority of his big fights, and Fernando Vargas' career was cut short. His prime was ended early, but he's going to get into the Hall of Fame, right? And then you got guys that are great. You got a table with Sugar Shane Mosley, Miguel Cotto, Vasyl Lomachenko. Those are great fighters. That's the great table. And then you got the all-time great table, where you got guys like Oscar De La Hoya, Bernard Hopkins, Tito Trinidad, Thomas Hearns. Those are all-time greats. And then you got the GOAT status, right? That's a table filled with Floyd Mayweather Jr., Manny Pacquiao, Roberto Duran, Sugar Ray Leonard, eventually Terrence Bud Crawford, Roy Jones Jr. There's different levels. So Triple G, for me, gets into the Hall of Fame by the skin of his teeth, but he's not going to be considered among the greats. With that being said, hit the like button, share the video, leave a comment, subscribe. Low Nose Boxing, because low nose boxing.